Hi, my name is Kirsten Schlebbe. I'm a researcher and lecturer at the Berlin School of Library and Information Science. And in this presentation, I talk about the question what participation means in the context of participatory research with children and young people, and which different forms and degrees of participation exist. So what is participatory research? In some way, all research requires participants who are called upon to participate in different ways. But if all research involves participation, what makes research participatory? Put very simply, participatory research is research with the population, not on the population. This means that individuals who have personal experience with the research topic are included in the research process, for example, as co-researchers. As a consequence, participatory research is primarily differentiated from conventional research in the alignment of power within the research process. But what does participation really mean in this context? Do I simply have to consult my participants as a researcher, or is a shared decision-making between researchers and participants necessary? There are several models that try to define the different degrees or levels of participation in research projects. This is the so-called ladder of citizen participation from Sherry Arnstein. It is one of the most used and discussed models of participation. Although it was originally developed referring to citizen participation, it has been used in various attempts to develop an overview of levels of participation in research projects. The ladder consists of 8 rungs, representing 8 levels of participation. The first 2 rungs, manipulation and therapy, describe levels of non-participation. Arnstein says that their real objective is not to enable people to participate, but to enable power holders to educate or cure participants. The next 3 rungs, informing, consultation, and placation, progress to levels of tokenism. Arnstein says that when participation is restricted to these levels, there is no follow-through, no muscle, and no assurance of changing the status quo. The top 3 rungs, partnership, delegated power, and citizen control, describe degrees of citizen power. Arnstein summarizes that further up the ladder, there are levels of citizen power with increasing degrees of decision-making clout. Roger Hart used the approach of Arnstein to create a ladder of youth participation to describe different levels of youth participation and non-participation in research projects. According to Hart, the first 3 rungs are non-participatory. This is the case if young participants are manipulated, rung 1, decuration, rung 2, or tokenized, rung 3, in the context of research projects. The next 5 rungs represent different degrees of participation, from assigned but informed, rung 4, to shared decision-making, rung 8. However, several researchers, including Hart himself, pointed out some critical aspects regarding the ladder metaphor. For example, Burgold points out that so-called early forms of participation, for example, if participants are briefed by the researchers, they constitute pseudo-participation. Burgold says ladder models suggest the existence of a continuum and thereby blur basic differences. Whether the affected persons are merely interviewed or whether they participate directly in research decisions possibly implies completely different social policy and professional policy backgrounds and underlying philosophical positions. The danger of pseudo-participation can be a particular problem in research projects involving children and adolescents because of the special power dynamics between young people and adults. Horgan says, while power is implicit in any research, it is especially pertinent in research with children involving adult researchers and gatekeepers in the form of ethics committees, parents, teachers, youth workers, and other adult stakeholders. Furthermore, the ladder metaphor may suggest that the higher rungs of the ladder are superior to the ones beneath in all cases. But it is not necessary that children always operate on the highest possible rungs of the ladder. Different children at different times might prefer to perform with varying degrees of involvement or responsibility. The important principle again is one of choice. Programs should be designed which maximize the opportunity for any child to choose to participate at the highest level of his ability. Hart also mentions the cultural limitations of the model. The latter reflects the assumption that individual agency in participating with others to make decisions is a key factor. But this degree of emphasis on individual agency may not be appropriate to many cultures. Hart states that fostering a debate about cultural differences in children's participation is important for anyone who is both concerned with the achievement of human rights and with maintaining the integrity of cultures. As a result of these and other points of criticism, Hart has come to the following conclusion. I see the ladder lying in the long grass of an orchard at the end of the season. It has served its purpose. I look forward to the next season, for I know there's so many different routes up through the branches and better ways to talk about how children can climb into meaningful and, shall we say, fruitful ways of working with others. Subsequently, several researchers developed alternate models that try to categorize the degree or level of participation in participatory research projects, including children and young people. While some of the models are based on Hart's approach, others distance themselves from the ladder metaphor. For example, Treseda developed a nonlinear model including 5 equivalent types of participation. This approach is based on Hart, but he avoids a hierarchical structure. Shire used the approach of Hart to develop a pathway to participation. This model is based on 5 levels of participation. In contrast to Hart, levels of non-participation are not included. Kirby et al. Also decided against a hierarchical representation of different levels of participation. Instead, they developed a categorization comprising 4 levels. Consultation or participation activities that are token or manipulative are not part of the model. Some researchers, for example Kirby and Gibbs, question whether the assignment of specific levels or degrees of participation is meaningful or possible at all. Kirby and Gibbs say that these models suggest that each participation initiative or task can be assigned one level of participation. In reality, however, levels of decision-making power constantly shift within projects and within tasks. Summing up, for many research projects, Hart's ladder model served as a useful tool to evaluate participatory approaches. But as Hart himself has pointed out, the ladder metaphor can be criticized in different ways and will not fit into the context of every project. Therefore, each participatory research project has to choose its own solution to discuss the forms, degrees, or levels of participation that should be achieved, depending on the project's specific context and goals. The different models presented here may be helpful during this task, but they should be used carefully and questioned constantly. Hopefully, this will lead to the development of new approaches and ideas to foster the participation and involvement of children and young people in research projects. Thank you for your attention. If you have questions or comments, feel free to contact me.